So much of the titles and supposed behavior attributed to Mary by historical Christianity can be explained by way of Marian hegemony. Think about the titles we give to Mary. She is proclaimed to be the best possible mother. But why is she never presented as the best possible police detective? Or captain? Or best general? Or best business executive? Or the best athlete? Or the best priest? Or best bishop? I think Dr. Bruce Molina is correct. I think the reason is because of hegemony. It's all Marian hegemony. And if you retort, well, Jesus isn't called the best police officer or military person, businessman or athlete, best or otherwise, let me stop you right there. In fact, historically, we have. We have a big-time docetic hangover in the church. We like to think of Jesus more as Superman than man, a strange visitor from another world disguised as a human being. Not really human. And historically, theologians have constantly manufactured culturally congenial false Jesuses who buy their culture's values hook, line, and sinker, and in doing that, they have indeed turned Jesus into the best possible police officer or military commander, teacher, philosopher, businessman, athlete, and definitely priest. To understand what I mean about Marian hegemony, let's go back through time to the 4th century. It is here where we find the true birth of Christianity, the Emperor Constantine's Roman political religion. We aren't talking Jesus groups anymore, folks. Now the proper term is church, by way of kuriekon doma, or place of the male who dominates everyone and everything. Mind you, I'm not saying that there is not continuity between church and ante-Nicene Jesus groups, or between those ante-Nicene Jesus groups and the original Jesus movement. I'm just making careful distinctions that both catechists and popular Catholic speakers often fail miserably at. In the 4th century, Christianity was the legal political religion of Constantine. At that time, Christian leaders of a philosophical bent were pressed to make everything about Christ crystal clear. This was ironic given the mark in Jesus' sentiments about clarity. Jesus liked to be ambiguous. Jesus wasn't imperial elite, but he was a Middle Eastern North African personality of the Eastern Mediterranean world. In any case, in the 4th century, more than ever before, it was time to correct shady ideas about Jesus, despite his own personal preferences. And who did this philosophizing and theologizing and Christologizing? Mediterranean male elites exclusively. And since the strongest emotional bond in the circum-Mediterranean world, then and now, is that between mothers and firstborn sons, how could these Mediterranean elite male theologians, themselves sons, miss the importance of Jesus' mother? This then is the origin of Mariology, the theological study of Mary's role. This is also the beginning of Marian hegemony. What drove this Mediterranean elite male enterprise? The principle of fittingness, or the rational deductive argument of convenience. Goes like this: potuit, desuit, ergo fecit. Potuit, God could do something, or Christ could do something. Desuit, was fitting that God should. Ergo fecit, therefore God did it. This principle of fittingness drove Mariology through the centuries. Originally, theologians, Mediterranean males all, had to address two problems. First, how could they speak of or behave toward Mary fittingly? By fittingly, I mean according to elite Mediterranean male expectations. How could they do that, since they never before honored messiahs with mothers? In other words, there was no proper model for this behavior. Second, what did Messiah mean anyway? That was very confusing, folks. Even within Israelite circles back in Jesus' day, Israelites had many contradictory ideas as to what Messiah meant. Messiah was like Heinz 57 variety. I mean, you ask 2 Israelites in Jesus' day their opinion on the Messiah, you'll get at least 3 answers. In fact, to some, Messiah wasn't even a human being. Now, ask the New Testament the following questions. How did Mary die? Silence. What was her exact role in the early Jesus groups? Not a word is given. What was her life like in Nazareth with her family? Zilch. How was her marriage with Joseph? Nada. What was her childhood like? Nothing is said. How did her birth come about? Complete quiet. Who were her parents? There's no answer. And when it comes to the assumption of Mary, her perpetual virginity, and the Immaculate Conception, the Bible presents us with nothing but deafening silence. Now consider that and everything the church believes about Mary. Where did all that material come from? We leave the first century with 2 main things known about Mary. 1, she was mother to Jesus. And 2, she was a virgin, meaning a young girl of marriageable and childbearing age just after her menarche, untouched by man when she became pregnant. So where in God's name did the church get all this extra information about Mary in order to form its Mariology, in order to develop its Marian doctrines, devotions, and practices? The wellspring of all this came from her stereotyped cultural roles as Mediterranean mother and maid. From that sprang almost all subsequent Mariology until recent times. And driving it all was the principle of fittingness. Potuit, desuit, ergo fecit. The principle of fittingness came to the rescue. Is it proper or fitting? Potuit. If so, it must be. Desuit. And therefore it is. Ergo fecit. It was proper to call the man Jesus God. Yes, in the 4th century it was. Well, if so, it must also be fitting to call Mary the Mediterranean Mother of God. Potuit. So she must be that, desuit, and therefore she was, ergo fecit. But hold on, any Mediterranean mother of the living God who is dead, buried and reduced to dust, is pretty worthless in that role, right? Sure, that's not a proper or fitting Mediterranean mother of the living God. Isn't God the source of all life? Absolutely. So what would make Mary properly fit for this role of being mother to the living God? Only if God raised her after death. Potuit. Therefore God must have raised Mary after dying. Desuit. In fact, she was raised. Ergo fecit. Ultimately, when we look at the assumption of Mary, it was assumption based on fittingness. Simple fix. But hold up. You cannot really be a good Mediterranean mother of the God of Skyvault unless you aren't also reigning with God beyond the upper level of the highest Skyvault. No way. That's not proper or fitting. What would fix that? Well, after raising Mary, it was proper, potuit, for God to take her up above the Skyvaults. Therefore, God must have brought Mary up to the highest Skyvault after her death. Desuit. Therefore God did this, and Mary is on the uppermost Skyvault right now with God. Ergo fecit. That's a fact, Jack. Do you see how many facts you can create by swallowing this argument of convenience? Where do you think the Marian litanies come from? Any devotee of Mary with just a drop of creativity can become a veritable Mariological cornucopia of information about Our Lady. Speaking of Our Lady, where did that title of Marian hegemony originate? From the principle of fittingness, of course. Everything discovered about Mary came by way of establishing parallels to Jesus' life and status. Jesus was poor, wasn't he? Sure. Well, so was Mary then. Not because of some kind of analysis of Galilean peasant socioeconomics, folks, but because of potuit, desuit, ergo fecit. Jesus healed, right? Yes, he did. So Mary must have also healed. Jesus is king, sure. And that makes Mary queen, right? Of course. And if Jesus is cosmic Lord, then Mary must be cosmic lady. Potuit, desuit, ergo fecit. It makes perfect sense. Ancient Mediterranean male elites were extremely adept at philosophizing this way. They turned Mary into a feminine Jesus. In practice, but not official belief, both Jesus and Mary transformed this way, became male and female halves of the monotheistic Christian God. Next time, we're going to see how the ugly side of this principle of fittingness added up to hegemony.